Hey friends, today I'm building the Specter House from The Sims 2 in The Sims 4, and I am at the Yuma Heights lot in Oasis Springs. This is the lot that is right across the street from the Land Grabs mansion. But yeah, so I'm here building the Specter House. They are a family from Strange Town in The Sims 2. Very interesting kind of backstory, I guess, or lore with them. So there are two Sims who live in the house when you start the game in The Sims 2. They are Olive Specter and Ophelia Nigmos. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. But it's basically, an elder Sim, Olive, and then her niece, who's a teenager. They live together. And yeah, Olive is a very suspicious character. She has a graveyard in like the front of her house, and there are, mysterious disappearances and things like that. So very interesting. But yeah, here I am just kind of figuring out the floor plan and everything. I do kind of switch up the design of the house a bit. The original version is really odd and honestly kind of ugly. It's got like so many different styles going on. So I kind of wanted to simplify the design style of the house here. So since this is in Oasis Springs, it's in the desert, I went with a more Spanish inspired style for the house. And I was looking around at kind of inspiration photos, kind of get ideas for different Spanish architecture, and at least a couple of them that I saw have, sometimes they'll have kind of like a rounded room or like almost like a turret, but less McMansion-y. So I decided to incorporate that into this, which I thought looked pretty decent. But those round walls were really difficult to to work with. So I think the only real issue that I have is that the ceiling can't really be painted in a rounded room, or at least I couldn't get it to work. So there's just like one weird section that's white if you look at it if you want to download it. So yeah, but overall I think the effect is pretty good, and I was kind of figuring out what to do with the front door, and of course it made the most sense to put it inside the rounded part and use kind of arches to have kind of this open air opening, I guess, for it. So I went with that. And then here I'm just kind of pulling out a bunch of different windows, kind of see, what I like best. I think I pretty much only went with rounded windows for around the house. I thought that made sense with kind of the rounded room that I did, and then like the arches. I thought that all tied together nicely. But yeah, if the Sims team could fix rounded rooms, that would be great, because they are really difficult to work with. But yeah, so just kind of figuring out, or getting all the windows placed, and then I'll kind of go through and add in flooring and wallpaper and all of that good stuff. So I do the cemetery part later on in the video, and I decided to use the kind of fake tombstones from the vampire game pack. Just since with like real tombstones in the game, I think you probably have to get them out of debug, and I wasn't sure if they would stick around if I uploaded it to the gallery and you tried to download it. So if you have, gravestones and things that you want to swap out, obviously you can do that. But yeah, I think the effect is still good. There's also some more variation with the tombstones from vampires, so I thought that looked pretty good. And yeah, I got the kind of the floors in, just went with kind of a standard red tile that you would see in Spanish style house. And the thing with Olive Specter is that she kind of has a lot of money, like an unrealistic amount of money for for her, I guess, career and all of that. So a lot of lore of her killing people to steal their money and things like that. So throughout the build I try to use really expensive items and a bunch of like very fancy decorative pieces and stuff like that, kind of help tell that. And yeah, in the original version, the dining room just had the two chairs, I guess, for Olive and Ophelia. So I kind of kept that. A lot of the styling's different, you know, of course, because the items are different in this game from The Sims 2. But yeah, the original version was very, I don't know, it was just like a lot darker. It had this kind of like odd castle looking stone, both inside and outside. But it had like a red terracotta roof. So a lot of weird mix match styles. There also weren't a lot of windows in the original build, which, like, I guess if she's doing shady stuff, she doesn't want people looking in her windows, but I didn't think that was very realistic, so I did do, you know, windows pretty much everywhere. Yeah, here in the kitchen, you know, using kind of expensive things, the most expensive cabinets and countertops and the more expensive appliances. I didn't go with the really expensive ones just because I don't think they look that great. And then I did this kind of open shelving thing above the coffee maker, but the shelves that I used didn't really have snap points for a lot of things, so I just ended up using one of the shelves from Dream Home Decorator to kind of get things lined up, and that worked out really nicely. And the original version had, you know, a lot of really expensive items, but it felt kind of empty, so I wanted to make this feel a little bit more lived in, you know, make a little bit more sense. And here I'm just kind of pulling out random things that I think, you know, might work in different places. Yeah, and then this small room next to the kitchen that I end up doing a little bit later, it's actually empty in the original version, which was, there's like nothing in it. So you'll see what I turn it into later, but yeah, here, this I think was just like a little hallway area into the main bedroom, but instead I kind of turned it into a little walk-in closet, which might be a little bit weird, I guess, if you're walking through the closet to get to the bedroom, but I thought that was a better use of that space than just using it as a hallway. And then this is Olive's room, and I use, you know, almost the most expensive bed and end tables and all of that. I do kind of wish that there were more expensive rugs, which might seem kind of odd to say, but all of the rugs are actually like very cheap, which is interesting because rugs in real life are like weirdly expensive. The economics of The Sims has never made any sense to me, how some things are like really expensive and other things aren't, but yeah. So yeah, just kind of pulling out some different decorative items. I imagine she really loves flowers and things, so I use a lot of plants throughout the whole build, and, you know, just trying to find expensive decorative items that she would have purchased with her ill-gotten gains. I use that very expensive photo and all of that, and yeah, if you're newer to the channel, I usually do the lighting last. I like to kind of have everything in before I do most of the lighting. I did add one lamp into her bedroom, but just because I saw that and I didn't want to forget about it. And while most of the items, you know, throughout the build are very expensive, they aren't always the most expensive. Like, I was going to use the most expensive bathtub, but I didn't think it really made sense with the style of the house. So I kind of wanted to go a little bit more for realism and style, rather than just whatever is the most expensive. And I used this great cabinet thing from Parenthood, I believe, which was great because it gave a little bit of separation for the toilet, which is just always nice. And then for the curtains, I was going to use those rounded ones, but I didn't like how they draped to the floor. I thought that would be kind of gross in a bathroom. Obviously, it doesn't matter in The Sims, but it matters to me, and that's what matters here. But yeah, just kind of cluttering up the countertop there, and yeah. So I also added a basement to this house. It didn't have one in the original version, but I thought it could help with some of the storytelling. So yeah, this is that kind of weird room that was just empty in the original version. So I turned it into a laundry room with access to the basement. And yeah, I used a bunch of different like laundry day stuff. I thought that, you know, made sense for the house. And yeah, for the basement, I don't know if you noticed when I built it, it kind of raised up the land around the foundation, which if that happens to you and you're not really sure how to fix that, if you go to the basement level, you can actually make the basement a little bit lower, kind of like raising the foundation of the house. And that'll get rid of that kind of weird built up part if you don't want that. That took me an embarrassing amount of time to figure out, so I wanted to pass along that tip to you. And yeah, I wanted to use the basement for a couple different things. I thought it would make sense to have a wine cellar down here. Maybe that's how she kind of launders her money that she's getting. I'm rewatching Breaking Bad right now, so I'm just thinking about money laundering, which, you know, seems like a totally normal thing to just be thinking about. But yeah, I thought it'd be great to use the new horse ranch stuff in here. This whole part of the basement is all horse ranch stuff, so if you don't have it, it'll just be this pretty much one room that will be affected. I know it's, you know, a newer pack and an expensive one, so hopefully that won't be too big of a deal. And there are people yelling outside, so hopefully you can't hear that. But I'm just going to spend the next 10 minutes changing the swatches here, I guess. So that was fun. And then I wanted to do kind of like a secret room down here. So I used this very inconspicuous bookcase door that no one would ever suspect. And I create these sort of cells for maybe some of her victims that she is, you know, holding against their will. So there's nothing to see down here, just totally normal things happening with, you know, a prison cell. Totally fine. Don't even worry about it. And yeah, just heading back upstairs. I wanted to use that big stack of artwork and things to maybe block the door, but there wasn't quite enough room, so it's fine. That bookcase is totally fine and normal, and no one will ever suspect that. So here in the living room, just adding in some of those pieces that I pulled out earlier, things that, you know, she has bought over the years with her immense fortune. And the layout of this room is a little bit odd. So this couch is kind of sticking out, which I don't love, but I couldn't really figure out a better way to do it because I did want to add a fireplace. I thought that would be nice in here. And I do end up using the most expensive computer for this desk here in a second. You know, totally fine. Don't even worry about it. Not suspicious at all with her $0 income or whatever. I'm not actually sure what she did as a career or anything. But yeah, just kind of finishing up the decorations and everything in here. I was originally going to use this globe statue thing, but then I remember we had the bar, which isn't as expensive as that decorative piece, but it's nice to have, you know, a more functional object in here. And then, yeah, I think, oh, yep, then I do the bookcase. I'm trying to figure out some sort of bookcase to put in here. I end up going with this really tall one to fill up the wall space nicely. And then I'll add in some very expensive artwork to the walls. Just trying to figure out some good swatches here. I imagine these are like very, you know, old pieces that she bought from an auction or something and has them proudly displayed. And then this room is Ophelia's bedroom, and there isn't a ton of information about her. Her bio basically just says that she is a hypochondriac, so wasn't really sure what to do with that information for a bedroom, but I tried to make it a little bit more colorful and quite a bit more cluttered too, just like a lot of different things that I kind of packed into this room. And Ophelia is actually romantically involved with Johnny Smith, whose house I did a couple weeks ago, if you want to check that out. But Ophelia is also the cousin of Nervous Subject, and Nervous Subject is the daughter of Olive Specter. So very interesting. Nervous Subject, I guess, was adopted by Loki and is it Cersei Beaker, whose house I will be doing probably next week. I think they're kind of the last. I think it's them and one other family that I need to do builds for. But yeah, very interesting. Apparently, Nervous Subject is Olive Specter and the Grim Reaper's son, so kind of wild. So since there isn't much information to go off of for Ophelia's personality, I decided that she was maybe into music, so I put up the records on the wall, and also maybe really likes to read, so I added in, I'll add in a bookcase here in a minute. with a bunch of different clutter items and things like that. Added in some magazines to her side table. And I also realized, so I'm kind of cluttering up her desk right now, and I realized that I didn't actually organize it very well. So there'll end up being just a bunch of stuff on the desk just randomly. I do go back and fix that before I upload it to the gallery. So don't worry about that. It is fixed, but it is not going to be fixed here in the video. So sorry about that. And I end up using quite a few items from the Book Nook kit. I actually really like that kit. I thought the items were really great in that. So used quite a few of those to clutter up the place. Same with the kind of everyday clutter kit and a lot of high school years things in here. I thought, that made sense, of course. And I ended up switching up these curtains a bit because they were clipping into the bookshelf so you could see it through that, which wasn't great. So I just swap out the ones on the sides, and I think that works out a lot better. And I was really struggling with this bathroom for a while. I ended up kind of cutting ahead a bit just because I could not figure out a good layout for this room at first. So I ended up moving one of the doors over, so that made it much simpler because I had the 2 different doors in here and trying to fit everything that I wanted. But yeah, I think the layout ended up working out pretty well. I've got some counter space for some clutter items that I add, and then just did a shower tub combo. Since this is kind of just Ophelia's bathroom, I can't imagine they're getting very many house guests who are using things, at least not for very long. But yeah, so bathroom, very simple. Just kind of put in a towel rack. I reused the cabinet that I used before. That worked really well in that space. And yeah, that'll pretty much wrap up this bathroom. And now I'm heading outside to work on the cemetery and the yard and all of that. So this lot actually worked out really well for this, with the kind of grassy area mixed with the sand. So I do the cemetery at the front, like in the original, and I added in a kind of, a very solid wall around the property. I imagine they would want plenty of privacy for whatever's happening. And yeah, that worked out really well. I ended up using the fence and gates from Strangerville. And I used the tombstones from Vampires, like I said earlier. I also ended up using some of the kind of vines on the wall that came with that pack. So that turned out nicely. I also really liked the little fountain items that came with that pack. They matched in with that wall much nicer than I was expecting. I pulled out a bunch of those like gargoyles too, but I don't really end up using, I think I only ended up using one of those. But yeah, so the original also had very kind of lumpy terrain where the cemetery is, kind of to imply that some of those graves are fresher than others. So I wanted to kind of mimic that. And at first I had just kind of gone through and raised it randomly. And then once I placed all of the tombstones that I wanted, I went through and used the like flatten to terrain height tool. That worked much better, so I was able to get like a nice flat square where the tombstone was, since they weren't really sitting very well on the uneven ground. They were partially floating, so I didn't really want that. So yeah, this worked out much better. They were all by the end, they're all sitting nice and flat on there. And then once I get those all situated, I'll go through and add in some terrain paint to kind of show which ones are a little bit fresher than others. I imagine the ones that are kind of built up higher are newer, since the ground hasn't really settled yet. So that was kind of my idea with the terrain paint. And then yeah, I just used that one statue item, which looks nice, but I didn't really have much space for anything else. And then they had this big open like patio area, so I recreated that, and then I added in some windows to this circular room thing. Yeah, and I also end up cutting out a lot of me just like figuring out what stone to use for the path. So you won't see any of that, thankfully, because that was very boring. It took forever. And I ended up not really changing it that much. But yeah, just trying to add in some different landscaping that matches the rest of the kind of neighborhood area. I wanted to do those shrubs at first, but then I was like, well, it's like on sand, so that doesn't really make that much sense. And when I put down these rose bushes at the front of the cemetery, I don't know, I had this vision of President Snow from the Hunger Games with like his white roses. Yeah, I don't know, just some sort of connection there. I don't really know what it is, but I liked the visual. And then I used this grass that came with the horse ranch pack. I thought that was nice to add in some little bit of detail around the back, since it's not really very usable space, but kind of filled it in a little bit better. And I ended up using a lot of cacti from Strangerville. Those worked out really nicely on this lot. And yeah, just adding in a little bit of terrain paint. At one point I go a little bit crazy with the terrain paint, so I didn't really like how that looked, so I got rid of that part, like under those wildflowers. I also added in a cow plant. It was kind of at the front of the cemetery if you missed it. But yeah, so that'll grow if you download this lot. And then yeah, just trying to find kind of the matching shrubs that are littered around in the green areas near the lot. And I imagine Olive takes a lot of pride in her garden / cemetery, so spends a lot of time making sure everything looks nice. And the original also had this like fancy red chair at the kind of the back or front, however you want to look at it, of the cemetery. So I added that in. I used that. I think that chair's from the Vampire Pack, which worked really nicely right there. And then yeah, just kind of finishing up the landscaping at the front of the build, outside of the fence. And then I just have a little bit more outdoor stuff to do before I do the lighting. But I thought this kind of front space would be perfect for a fountain, so I added one of those. I can't remember if that was from base game or yeah, but so that's in there. I added a flower arranging table and a chess table. It's not a Sims build unless there's a chess table. So growing up I thought I'd be playing chess a lot more based on how prevalent chess is in The Sims, but I don't really ever play chess. I'm not even really sure how to play. I should probably figure that out. But yeah, now we're doing the lighting. So just kind of doing the outdoors here first with some kind of standard lawn lights. I added in those larger ones and these really great wall lights, and I struggled to get them to work in this round room. Man, round rooms are not great. They should really spend some time fixing those. But yeah, the lighting is kind of the final part of this build. So that'll pretty much wrap it up for me. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch today. I know there's a million things you could be doing, so really appreciate your time. If you liked the video, please leave a like. That helps a lot. And please subscribe if you'd like to see more. And you can also download this on the gallery at any time. Thanks again. Have a great day.